What's up, everybody, and welcome back to episode 6 of the Commissioner's Office podcast. My name is Daniel, and as I've said before on this podcast, I'm a big Bears fan. I am from Chicago, and this week I'm not going to be ranting about the Bears. So you're welcome, all of my listeners who don't like when I rant. Instead, today I'm going to be explaining to you how the Bears can win their next game, because it is a rather big game. The Bears are in a very tough spot, unfortunately, because for a few reasons. I'm going to explain that. So first off, the Bears are going to play the Minnesota Vikings at Minnesota in Week 15 on Sunday. It's going to be a very, very good game. Both teams are 6-7. They're both jockeying for playoff position. The Bears in particular need a few things to happen. You know, they still have 3 more games left. A lot can happen between those 2 periods between the game now and the season ending. So we'll have to see. But you know, the best way to get yourself into the playoffs is win. Everything else comes secondary. As long as you win, their chances of making it in are much better. So yeah, let's get to the game. Both teams are 6-7, and I'm going to talk about, some key injuries in the game for both teams and how the Bears can win this game. Obviously, I favor the Bears because they are my favorite team. It was a good win for the Bears last time. Last week, they beat the Texans 36-7. I believe that was the score last week. And they're looking pretty good. They took down Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans and were able to get a nice easy win. The Bears usually have one blowout win per year, so this is probably going to be it. I've been watching this team for a while, and I know how they play. They like to keep their games close. What can I say? But I think this game's going to be another close game. Both these teams are very, very evenly matched, and it'll be fun to watch. Going back to that previous game, though, the entire team played well. You had a really good game from Mitch Trubisky. I think he had like 3 touchdowns in that game. Khalil Mack had a sack. They were just wreaking havoc on Deshaun Watson. David Montgomery was really good. Jimmy Graham had a touchdown. Allen Robinson had a touchdown. Everyone was playing well on that team. It was just a really good all-around game. And I think one of the main reasons why it was this good was it's because of the new play calling. Bill Lazor, the offensive coordinator, I was very skeptical about his play calling, especially the first game he played against the Vikings. But as the season has gone on and as he's called more games, his play calling has only gotten better, and it is really good. Now, I will clarify, it is very hard to recognize good play calling from bad play calling when the team is doing well either way. As, obviously, if a team is having success, they are going to, you're going to assume that they have good play calling. So it's really hard to know, but I think with a team like the Bears, that team has talent on it, and when the play calling has been the problem the entire time. The play calling has been the problem, but the reason why the offense isn't doing as well is because of the play calling, because they have talent. So when talent stays consistent on the team, but yet the offense is still lackluster, play calling is the first issue that I go to. Now the offense has looked much better the past few games, so I think some credit should go to Bill Lazor there. But before we get to this week's game versus the Vikings, I'm going to cover some of the injuries. And there are some big players not going to play for both teams. So I am recording this at about 2 o'clock on Friday. So I just got the results of the injury reports on Friday. So, by the way, a little tip for everyone trying to get the best information on who's playing or not. Maybe if you're like a fantasy football nerd like I am. If you have Twitter, follow the NFL team's PR. They have separate accounts from the actual team. So like the Bears have their own account, but then they also have like Chicago Bears public relations. They they're the ones who actually tweet out the injury reports. They came out for me like 30 minutes before recording. So it was actually really good timing. And obviously, the reporters get that information from the injury reports from the PR team. So, it's like going to a primary source instead of a secondary source because you're getting the information as fast as possible. So do that if you're trying to get good information. But on to the injuries. Player that's not going to be playing is Kyle Rudolph. He is their best tight end on their team. He's Kirk Cousins' safety valve, but they drafted Irv Smith, I think 2 years ago. I think he's in his second year, and Irv Smith has really started to emerge as a good player. But Kyle Rudolph is actually out with a calf injury. He did not play last game. He didn't play last game. He didn't practice Thursday, and he was declared out today. So that's definitely a big loss. Irv Smith is a good player and going to be the successor to the tight end position as Rudolph's starting to get up there in age. But nonetheless, it is still a huge loss for this Vikings team. The other one, I'd argue this is even worse. Eric Kendricks. He's probably the second best player on that team behind Dalvin Cook. You can make the argument he's better. He's their middle linebacker, and he is going to miss this game with a foot injury. He did not play the last 2 games. He also did not practice on Thursday, so the writing was kind of on the wall. He's going to miss his 3rd straight game. That really sucks because he is a very good run stopper. He's very good in coverage. So when the Bears try to run the ball, which they've been doing pretty well the last few games, so I'm assuming they're going to try to do it again, I hope. That's going to be a big hole, and especially since this team already doesn't have Anthony Barr. He's been on IR like the entire year. That's a huge loss. So now that linebacking core, which is a big part of that Vikings defense, is not going to be that good. Only one other notable injury, Alexander Mattison, the backup to Dalvin Cook. He's questionable. He had limited practice on Thursday for an illness. It's not COVID related because if it was, they would have shut down, I think. And he would have been put on the COVID list. So it's some kind of other illness. So he's questionable. So if Dalvin Cook were to get hurt, they would be out without their backup running back if he does not play. But when Dalvin needs his rests, they go to Madison, who's a pretty good second option. So if he doesn't end up playing, that's not quite a good thing for the Vikings. Moving on to the Bears now, they have a few more injuries. Dion Bush, their backup safety, he doesn't light the world on fire, but he's a serviceable backup. He's questionable with a foot injury. He did not practice on Friday, so Bears have been dealing with some injuries this year, and they need depth on their team anyway. So it would be a miss if he would be missed if he didn't play. But still got a few days until the game. Jalen Johnson, their star rookie corner, he was removed from last game with a shoulder injury. He did not practice on Friday. He's still listed as questionable, so that's not good. Jalen Johnson, he's kind of gotten cooked the past few weeks, but overall he has been fantastic this season, and it would be a shame if he didn't play because he is really good. They really need him. I hope Chuck Pagano is not going to put him on Adam Thielen, but if he does, I guess it's better than nothing. Or the next guy, Buster Screen. He is out with a concussion. He did not play last game. He did not practice Friday. So yeah, he's going to miss some time. Buster Screen, he's kind of a love-hate guy around the Chicago area. Some people think he's pretty good. I think he's okay. Other people, for example, my brother, thinks he's horrible. And, I think he's somewhere in the middle. I think he's a valuable person on the team, but I think Chuck Pagano makes some dumb decisions like, just because your best receiver happens to play in the slot does not mean you have to put your slot corner on him. That's what Chuck Pagano did against the Packers And Devontae Adams, I think he cooked him alive. So that's not a good thing. A few more injuries here. Khalil Mack, he's been banged up all year. I don't even think he's missed a game, but he has just he's dealt with injuries this year. It wasn't surprising to see him on the list. He's listed as questionable with a shoulder injury. He was limited on Friday. Obviously, there is still time, and Khalil Mack, and as well as other players, play through injuries all the time. I don't really see this as too worrisome. I think that he should play, knock on wood. And the last one is Jimmy Graham. Their tight end, he doesn't do a lot. I think he only has like 35 catches on the year, but he has 6 touchdowns. So, he's a valuable guy to have in the red zone. He is also questionable with a hip injury. He was also limited on Friday. So, if he were to not play, that's going to be a big loss. Cole Kmet has kind of emerged in the past few games. He's been pretty solid. But, Jimmy Graham, he's just a good player to have on your team. He may run like a pylon, but in the red zone, he's an automatic touchdown. Like, he is insane. So, yeah, those are the injuries. I think if Jalen Johnson doesn't play, then the Bears are going to be in trouble, because not only do the Vikings have Adam Thielen, who's obviously one of the best route runners in the league, as well as receivers in general, they also have Justin Jefferson, who is a candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he also plays in the slot. So he's going to have a good game. It'll be tough to stop, especially if Jalen Johnson isn't playing, because then it'll be Kyle Fuller, the only starting corner on the team, probably going to guard Thielen. And yikes, I don't even know who would, like Kendall Vildor. Maybe is he still on the team? I don't know. He would probably guard him. That's the injury report, and we're going to move on now to the keys of the game, keys to the game for the Bears. And I have found 4 keys for the Bears to win. This is more than a winnable game. I expect the Bears to win this game. I think that the only reason they didn't win their previous meeting with the Vikings was because they were in the middle of their slump, and Bill Lazor was calling his first game as play caller. He was still kind of feeling it out. That being said, that offense does not warrant an excuse to not score like any points, because Cordero Patterson, I think, had like the only touchdown of the game for the Bears. I think Cairo Santos maybe had a field goal, but obviously that's not a touchdown. So, they got to get the offense going. But the biggest key to the game, in my opinion, well, I think this should be anyone's opinion, it is by far you have to shut down Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is the main part of this Vikings offense, and he's scored the most. He has the most scrimmage yards of anyone in the league. He has something like 1,300 rushing yards and like 300 receiving yards. He's got a ton of touchdowns. He's having a career year, and they have to shut him down. Now, the Bears actually did a very good job of shutting him down last time. He did not have any touchdowns. He had a very tough game. Granted, the Bears are very good at shutting down good running backs. I'll give them that. Their front 7 is one of the best in the league, no doubt. Especially, I think Akeem Hicks is going to play. He's been dealing with an injury of his own. So as long as they got Hicks there and Mack, I think they're in a good situation. But if they can't shut him down and he's just wreaking havoc on that defense, it's going to be hard for the offense to catch up. Speaking of the offense, the second key to the game is going to be to keep the offense going. This is pretty self-explanatory. They had their best game last week versus the Texans. Texans are a bad defense. I totally understand that. The Vikings, without Eric Kendricks, I wouldn't say are much better. So, keep it going. The first thing they need to do is they got to protect Trubisky. Look, Mitch Trubisky is he's very good in the pocket. He's able to evade sacks pretty well, but one thing he lacks in the pocket is awareness. If they get around Charles Leno or Jermaine Ifedi, whoever they're going to start at right tackle, he's going to probably cough the ball up. Now, granted, I don't think the Vikings have Danielle Hunter playing. I could be wrong, but I don't think he's playing. Might still be on IR. There's, the Vikings pass rush is not as good as it has been the past few years. The offensive line again played pretty well last week. J.J. Watt wasn't too crazy, so I think they can. Well, actually, I know they can handle themselves. It's just a matter of if they actually do it. As long as they protect Trubisky, he can step into his throws, and they will be so much more accurate, and it'll be much better. Second point here is to get David Montgomery as well as Allen Robinson the ball. Again, very self-explanatory. David Montgomery is like top 5 in broken tackles this year. He is extremely elusive, and when you put him in space, he will just decimate you. First play from scrimmage last week, 80-yard touchdown. That was a perfect way to start the game, and it really set the tone for the dominance that the Bears brought on the Texans last game. David Montgomery has to get going for this team to really win this game. At the very most, he's got to match Dalvin Cook. If you're not gonna take Dalvin Cook down, that's gonna be tough. But David Montgomery's gonna have to step up as well. And the same definitely goes for Allen Robinson. He just eclipsed 1,000 yards last week. They got to get him the ball. And, we know how to get Robinson the ball. He's really good. He's a really good route runner. He gets open really well. As long as they get him the ball, especially near the goal line, because he's a good player in the red zone, they will have no problem scoring. Allen Robinson is the best player on that offense by far, and as long as he keeps his production up, this team will do fine on offense. But it's also a big point for Mitch. He's got to make sure, he's got to just get him the ball. It's as simple as that. And then it's kind of more of a minor point here, but you got to get the tight ends going in the red zone. That's another big part. Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham are both very big physical tight ends. Jimmy Graham, he's got that basketball player background. He was like a 4-year college basketball player at Miami, I believe. He's that power forward. Get it to him in the post, and he'll spin and just dunk on you, which is exactly what he does in the red zone. Whenever these guys get into the red zone, not even within the red zone, within the 10-yard line, I do not want to see them throwing literally to anyone except for Graham, Kmet, or Robinson. I don't care. Just don't do it. Because if you just get Jimmy Graham out wide, doesn't even matter if he's on a linebacker, just throw him the ball. As long as it's fairly accurate, he will probably catch it. Kmet, they haven't really given him the same opportunities given Graham's, obviously, production. He's got 6 touchdowns. But, Kmet is the same way. He had I really liked his touchdown versus the Lions 2 weeks ago. On that bootleg, they got Kmet going to the left, and they put him in space, and he just barrels his way into the end zone. You can run that same thing with Graham, but the problem is he doesn't run like he used to. That's 5 years ago. He probably makes that touchdown. But Jimmy Graham, when I say he's a walking pylon, he just doesn't really move that well anymore. He's just kind of like a big body to have in the red zone. So if you're gonna get someone in space, that's the job for Kmet. But if you're trying to get someone to post up in the end zone to catch back shoulder fade, Jimmy Graham's your guy. Another key to the game for the Bears is to force turnovers. This is something the Bears have lacked all year in doing. It looked a lot better last week. They got a safety that sort of counts as a turnover, but it's also points, so that's good enough. You got to remember who you're playing. Kirk Cousins. Those a lot of interceptions, man. Captain Kirk, for as much of a gunslinger as he is, he coughs the ball up a lot. You have to take advantage. You got to remember that this team had the best turnover ratio a few years ago. Got to get Eddie Jackson, Kyle Fuller, Roquan Smith. Get to that ball and get that ball out. That's all you got to do. I think a good game from them, as far as turnovers go, is anywhere more than 2. If you get at least 2 turnovers, I'm going to consider that a win. The other thing they got to do, get Khalil Mack going. The Vikings tackles are nothing special. I fully expect to see Khalil Mack slamming 310-pound tackles to the ground. I fully expect that to happen. Also, while we're on the subject, let's try to get Robert Quinn to touch a quarterback for the first time all season. Holy cow, he has been a horrible signing. If he goes crazy the last 3 games of the season and has a good playoffs, if we get in, then then I will stop criticizing him. But he has been really bad. They brought him in as the guy that will, as the guy who plays opposite to Mack, because the big problem last year with Mack was he was being like triple teamed every play because they had like Leonard Floyd on the other side who wouldn't do anything, who ironically is having a career year with the Rams now. But, they brought in Robert Quinn, guy who's had 20 sacks in the season once. He's got to start playing like that because he signed for like $60 million, so he's got to start playing up to his contract. But if he starts to get going, then Mack will do the same, and it will be very good. Now the last one, and I think this is a big one as well, smart play calling. And I will explain to you what smart play calling looks like. I've watched this team before. I know exactly how every player functions. This is how it is. So, Mitch Trubisky, he did not need to throw the ball deep in the Texans game. You know why? Because he would just dink and dunk his way down the field, and they would run the ball well. As long as you can keep doing that, the offense will be fine. I get it. Trubisky is not Patrick Mahomes, but you know why? Because he doesn't throw the ball deep that much. There's just a difference. Like some quarterbacks just don't throw the ball down the field anymore. And that's fine. If Trubisky wants to survive and at least win this game, just give him time and let him dink and dunk the way down the field. But if the defense puts the Bears in a 14-0 hole, halfway through the first quarter, then, he's got to start going deep, and the whole plan goes out the window. So part of this is getting off to a good start on both sides of the ball. If you get a special teams touchdown, great. That's all he's got to do. Run the ball out of shotgun a little more. Maybe not on 4th and 1 to, save the game, but it worked very well with Montgomery. Don't run that stupid inside zone play to the left or right 7 times in a row. It doesn't work, Laser. You know it doesn't. That's why Nagy gave up play calling. So, just get back to basics, Shotgun runs up the middle. It doesn't have to be anything too fancy. Montgomery will get the yards he needs. It's really not that bad. Graham's got 6 touchdowns on the year. You got to get him another one. Jimmy Graham is a red zone monster. He has very good hands, and I know he's not the athlete he once was, but I've already gone over this. If you're anywhere near the end zone, you should be going to Graham. Allen Robinson is really good at one specific play that I really like. When he runs an in route like 15 yards over the middle, he is always wide open. That is the best route that he runs. Don't run these cutesy 15-yard fades to the right side where Trubisky has to make a perfect throw or Robinson has to moss the guy. Just let him work and he will do the work himself. And assuming Trubisky makes the throw, of course. I haven't mentioned Darnell Mooney or Anthony Miller yet. They're different types of receivers. You have to get them in space. With Allen Robinson, he will do it himself. He'll get himself in space because he's a good route runner. You don't have to worry about that. With Mooney and Miller, Mooney you can throw screens to. You can throw slants. Miller's best work is over the middle or deep. That's what you have to do with them. We saw in the Texans game, Mooney had a touchdown, I think on a bubble screen or like a flat. Miller, it's kind of similar, but his best work is on like drag routes because he makes people miss. And his hands are incredibly inconsistent. One day he's making one-hand catches, another day he's dropping 5 passes a game. It's always kind of a wild card with him, but overall, Anthony Miller has a lot of talent. So if you just kind of get him to run the right routes, he will get in space. He will do fine. And the last thing the Bears need to do is reduce penalties. They didn't have a ton last game, but especially on the offensive side, they really have to not have any like holding penalties. I'm looking at you, Charles Leno. Every time they run the ball to the left side, Charles Leno is there for a holding penalty. Also, no more of these false start penalties. Just any of those stupid illegal shift penalties, illegal formation. That was a huge problem when Nagy was doing the play calling. Laser understands it a little better, so that's been pretty good the past few weeks. But penalties. That's a big one. You're not going to get called for offensive PI that much, not anymore at least. So holding is the big one that I'm concerned about that. The problem with bad offensive lines is not only are they just bad in protection, they're bad in penalties. They will get flagged much more than good offensive lines, obviously. So, but again, the line has looked a little better the past few weeks. I still think their strength is run blocking, which is why I think they should try to get Montgomery going, apart from his immense talent, obviously. But, they have to reduce penalties. And it really goes back to Trubisky. The longer Trubisky holds the ball, the more likely of a chance that there's going to be a holding penalty. That's the trade-off when you have a mobile quarterback. And I'm fine with him holding the ball, but the line has to be as well, in that they will not commit penalties while he still has the ball. So that's going to conclude episode 6 of the Commissioner's Office podcast. I apologize for the shorter episode, but I did just want to talk about this game because it is a fairly important one for both sides. Nonetheless, if you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, check us out on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts. We are called the Commissioner's Office, and I tell stories about the NFL, past and present. So other than that, happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, and I will see you all next time.